Totoeng Thngai Temple, a bit south of the Bakong, which is part of the Roluos Group. There's not a lot of information about this temple, but I can tell you a little bit of the history. So Jayavarman II was the first king attributed to the Khmer Empire, and he built the city up in the Kulin Mountains. During his reign, he actually moved the city down here to the Roluos Group. His son ruled after him, Jayavarman III, and his son was Indravarman I. During his time, he expanded the empire through the means of agriculture and trade. And his son was Yasovarman I. And Yasovarman I moved the kingdom over to near Angkor, where we attribute the Angkor temples. He built the Bakong. So as we move through these temple ruins, lots of standing arches and modern offerings. The Khmer Empire began in the year 802. That was King Jayavarman II. And although I don't know if he actually built this temple, he built the Roluos Group. So that makes these temples down here 1200 years old. You can see the sandstone door frames and window frames and lintels, and quite a lot of brickwork. This is a brick wall covered in moss here in the wet season, and we're here surrounded by the bamboo. Totoeng Thngai Temple.
Surrounded by the remnants of a very old wall in disrepair. Just looks like rubble, but there are a couple of walls, and beyond those walls is still a bit of a moat. The temple itself is surrounded by a fair bit of bamboo, and on a windy day it sounds very interesting when you come here. You listen to the wind blowing through the bamboo. But here's one of the many doorways that's left. What's interesting is there's no big main structure or even foundations, just lots of these things. They actually remind us a bit of Stonehenge. I think there's about 12 of them. So if we look through here, past the bamboo, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Quite big too. That's a fine workmanship here, as you can see, to make them fit perfectly. But that's all that's left. There was a structure beyond this doorway, You can see a bit of a hollow pit surrounded by some very old bricks. Our guess is the main materials for the buildings beyond the doorways were taken away to build something else, somewhere else. It's a bit more of the moat wall. Rather pretty this time of the year with the moss growing. This was obviously too big to carry away. It looks like it's a base for a statue or a linga. So there is a little bit of carving you can see around here, but not much. Another doorway, incomplete, the top's missing. It's just rather interesting though that all of the others that we see through here are intact with the tops on each of the doorways. And they're not just little bits of stone either, quite big and quite heavy. And we don't know why, but we've been here a couple of times, and each time we've been accompanied, if you like, by a local person, different one last time, that would stand around very close to you while you're wandering around the temple. It could be just curiosity, it could be they feel ownership of the temple. He's certainly not an official, but we're being watched closely. So even though all that's left appears to be these huge doorways, and many of them, there are some other remnants that tell you that yes, there were some significant buildings here. This bit of rock here is being carved and you can see the holes in there. These holes probably would have been the framework for these round columns, window columns. So that would suggest that there were some buildings that had windows and columns in the windows. And here and there we'll find some little carved bits. This looks like a column that would have been on the outside of a doorway. It's got typical patterns of 10th century temple carvings. Another one here. And one of the very few images that we've seen around this temple. A few more remnants of what would have been walls around the structures. Reminds us a bit of Ak Yum Temple. That was a really old one. I think that was about 8th century. But a lot of the areas where there were meant to be buildings, you just found lots of rubble like this, old man-made bricks. Here's another window column, and you can see the peg down the bottom. And we've shown people before that there are bases that these pegs sit in to hold them in place. Quite big, so the window spaces must have been pretty big around these temples as well. It would appear that this doorway has only very recently collapsed. We don't recall seeing this last time, but you can see some fresh soil down there. There's the vertical bits of the door frame here, and the top, and on the other side. So something has caused this to fall over, which is pretty significant change considering how long this temple's been here. We're situated in the middle of a small village, and a lot of these old temples are still used by some local people to make offerings and prayers. So here's some things left behind by the locals rather recently. So nothing glamorous in this temple, but it is rather unique in that all you see are these doorways, some really quite big, and so many of them. The remnants of an inner wall, and again all that's remaining are these impressive doorways. Prasat Totoeng Thngai, a small interesting temple that basically consists of a lot of very big doorways amongst the bamboo. Not much other carving, but if you're out here in the Bakong district, it's worth it to stop by just for 10 minutes to see something a little bit different.